Let's do a dragster update and talk about a few things. So the hydro build over here is currently playing the always a bridesmaid and never a bride right now because the transmission for it is still in production. But I'll talk about what's going on with it right now, and then we'll cut to stuff that has to do with the transmission going into it. As it is right now, we have a 314 in it. What we ended up discovering was that machines like that Hydro Gear decides to advertise as the 618 being an upgrade really is just a lie. The 618 and the 314 are exactly the same transmission, but the difference between them, if I get over here, is nothing more than this group of controls, and the axle is a D-cut axle for a four-wheel, four-lug hub for the golf cart style tires and rims. So we planned on swapping in a 618 until I found out that I had been hogwashed and it was what it was. So this is the one that came out of there that we blew the pump assembly in. We're going to be tearing that down in order to do a follow-up on that real soon. But first, I need to get all the other drag racing stuff ready because I need to be done in 7 days from the time you see this video. Let's talk about the transmission that we're working on now for the Hydro Dragster. So, in a 314, you have a 10 to a 10 as far as your pump is concerned. This is the bigger Hydro Gear from the late 90s into 2000s and stuff. And the sticker for them is right here. And you can see this very distinct bottom section that is on them. They're in a lot of YTH 150s, 160s, 180s on the Husqvarnas. I think I messed up one of those. Somebody will tell me in the comments. And they're also in a bunch of LT4000 Craftsmans. And the reason why I chose these is because instead of a 10 to a 10, it is a 10 to a 21 for our pump going to our drive motor for the hydraulics. So our drive motor for the hydraulics sits on the end of this. And this is the drive shaft that normally would go to this intermediate gear, which fits right here and drives this in order to go and spin this jack shaft in order to spin this differential. So if we eliminate this, then we don't have a way to go from here to here. So what I discovered in our junkyarding is that this is a 9-tooth sprocket reverse gear out of a Spicer. These are also in Peerless 700 4-speeds. They're in a whole ton of different transaxles. They're a dime a dozen, easy to get a hold of, and because of racing, you can still order these. So what I did was I took one, and I bored out the entire center. Now, that center bored out, if I pull this, I'm trying to do this one-handed with a bunch of slippery stuff, I can fit this right here and weld it onto there, which allows me to pull this out, put a straight axle in, and take this hub assembly and mount it right there where that differential is. That's my goal. That's what we're going to try. And I know somebody is going to point out that there's no way that that gear is going to fit because that channel is there. Here, I'll show you the gear going onto the shaft piece here. So I discovered this actually isn't 1 inch. I thought it was, but it's not. So what I did was I ground this down to the point that the 1 inch would fit, and then I ground it down just a tiny bit more so that that would fit. But the other thing I discovered was that these are cut down to the point they're not actually the height of the surface. So I'm going to have to build it up with weld very carefully so I don't heat warp it, and then weld this into place. And on this, if we look at it when we flip it over, we're going to see that right there is the flow channel. So that goes from here over and around and into that side of the assembly. So what that means is right here, there is nothing for channel. There's nothing that we can't grind out in order to be able to try and get that chain to clear. So that's what we're going to probably try next. There we go. Wish me luck. That's where I am on the hydro. Now, let's take a look at the other two machines over here. We've got the diesel eater here.
With Pendleton lane number 1.
And our big thing with the diesel eater, well, we got two big things going on with diesel eater. The first thing is we've got a giant 12-pound cast iron pulley on here. So this is the stock pulley, which we ended up actually bending while running the diesel eater. So there is that. And this weighs in at about a little over half a pound. That pulley weighs in at 12 pounds. So we're going to try and get the momentum going. But this slightly bigger pulley isn't going to do us any good because we found, well, I'll post up some video. We ended up finding that the diesel eater basically drops flat on its face at about 80 feet down the short track, which means that there's about 20 feet worth of plenty of time for the guy to totally smoke you. So over here, we've got this, which is an 8-inch pulley, and it's a little bit bigger than an 8-inch. We really honestly would prefer to go with a 7, but what we found was a 6. So we're going to take that 6 and we're going to put that on the rear and see how that works out. The other thing we discovered while we were working on this was I was really worried about squaring up this pulley. But if you look very carefully, I'll try and line it up for you. If you look, that belt kitties to that side, up in here. So that means this pulley actually needs to go this way on that shaft just a little bit. So if I cut that down and I lay this pulley over the top of that hub piece from this direction, that should bring it back over into here in order to fix that alignment problem. And you can see that alignment problem in the front of the machine because that belt goes all the way under and to the front and hits this idler, which you can see it is pulling all the way over to that side. So I need to get it pulled over to here, which means fixing that pulley in the rear. The battery on the front definitely made a ginormous difference on the takeoff and everything. That was worth it. My wheelie bars, on the other hand, were utterly, totally a failure on my engineering part. I don't know if you can see that, but those started off straight. So what I'm going to do is I ended up getting a snowmobile, and I got a snowmobile in order to pull some parts off for an alternative project this winter. And what I'm going to do is build up the rear section here and try to put in a shock of some sort maybe in between, but most likely what I'm going to do is just take this and build it up so that that all is being impacted. Because as it is right now, this goes like this, and all of that is taking the force of the machine, and that is just dumb. That was totally bad design on my part. Never should have done it that way. What I need to do is triangulate up and then move that back so it's coming up to the frame in order to be able to make that work so it's adjustable and it takes all of the impact. The other thing that I need to swap out for, which is why those are there, is those janky welded on rims. Did not realize it until I was driving down the drag strip and the whole front end was wobbling and doing its own thing and kept forgetting to swap them out. The big mod is, it works really good. But the problem is the really janky MTD frame, it twists on launch. So I'm going to post up 2 videos. The first one I won, the second one I bailed. And the reason being is because when this thing takes off, it goes like this, levels like this. And so I need to do some sort of cross brace underneath the frame or something or other. Oh, a lot of people have asked if it really is what it says it is. And yes, it is the Kohler Courage 25. It is what it says it is. The problem with it is it's actually not running as good as it ought to be because I'm not running the correct carb on it. I need to be running the 27 horsepower pumper carb, and this one is not that. So at some point when I need a little bit more gusto out of it, I will spend the extra money to put the correct carb onto it, and we'll get a little bit more top end out of it. It is what it is. We've kept this thing as junkyard as possible. One other thing that we ran into was that this was coming loose and twisting. And so when it was all the way over here into 3rd gear, it was actually wedging against the throttle up here. And so you would let off of it, and instead of letting off to coast in 3rd gear, it would stay at about 2/3 throttle because it was hitting this. So you ended up having to do a force shift into 2nd, which is not good for the transmission when you're going full throttle. And we've now fixed that situation. A lot of you have asked what this is, because apparently that is interesting. It's the outside of a pull start for a 5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton. And the reason for that was because my foot sits there, and I naturally want my foot to be here, and I kept lighting my boot on fire. So that's why that's there now. Oh, the reason why this is here is because this is independently controlling my choke. Just so everybody doesn't say, hey, stupid, just take it off the dashboard. The other quibble that I have is I need a little bit more traction. Now, these tires are they're not the originals. I highly doubt that they're the original tires from 1977. So I'm betting that they've been replaced at least once. Especially since 1970s series tires usually look more like this or look more like this. These are probably somewhere out of the 80s would be my guess. A lot of Craftsmans had this style. I'm debating cutting the tires for more traction, as in cutting the black marks out and leaving the rest. So this center line and then the paddle pieces right here, every other. Or just a little bit more traction, cutting these out and leaving a slightly more, I don't know, tire-ish type tread in the middle, like a all-terrain tread type cut versus paddle tire type cut. What do you guys think? All-terrain? Paddle tire? Alright, let's talk about one more machine. While I walk out here, what a lot of you have ended up asking is what's up with the tracks. So, one track is extremely short. Because there is a person that stores trailers and 18-wheelers and stuff like that on the end of the track, oftentimes it ends up only being about 100 foot. There is another track that we run, which is out at the Union Fair, which is 150 foot with plenty of run out in order to be able to get up and going and then slow down. So here's what I am debating at this point. I am debating reviving the Bug. So, as you guys know, the Bug was in some videos. The Bug was in a bunch of videos, and the Bug has definitely earned its stripes. And I did an experiment with the Bug of running the MTD transaxles. I blew up a bunch of them. I swapped it over to an MST for a while. And then my last rendition was swapping it over to an MST and giving it slap shift. Like so. So this is an MST that only has first gear, fourth gear, sixth gear. Because it was set up to just slap it from one to the other, just like I do my big mod. And it's a good machine. It did okay. It was not in the top, but it wasn't in the bottom either. But part of the problem was that I had this, you know, half and half 22 horsepower Kohler in it that is neither the upper end of big mod and too big for small mod. So what I think I'm going to do is for the Union Fair, which is 150 feet, I'm going to set this one up so that it is third gear, sixth gear in the transmission, so that there's no screwing around. It's just, this is what you launch in, this is what you shift to, and hold on for all the beans that you can give it. And try and find a single cylinder Briggs & Stratton and revive this as a small mod. And build it just for the longer track. Well, there we go. I know this has been a long video. I know it's been a lot of info. I know that there has been a lot to discuss, but that's where I'm at right now. The diesel eater build is pretty much hitting that point of I'm either going to find a little bit more horsepower, a little bit more torque, or a little bit more broken something. The build is just, it's hit that point where it's starting to peak out. And either I've got to go and push it to the limits, or I should just give up on it. Now, we're not one to give up on a build, so we're going to push it to its limits. We're going to spin that cast iron for all it's worth, slam that transmission in third gear high, and we're going to see if it holds together on race day. So, there we are. Hope you enjoyed the update. Have a good day.